1. Accept. In accepting a formal invitation, it is important to respond appropriately. 2. Satisfy. We cannot satisfy consumer demand without importing goods and services. 3. Continent. In the 1930s, flights across the continent were not common. 4. Appointment. Did you call the dentist and make an appointment for the treatment? 5. Proud. Graduating from university is a huge accomplishment and you should be proud of yourself. 6. Permit. Children of 6 and under are not permitted to use the swimming pool unless they are with an adult. 7. Approach. There were 2 vehicles on the road approaching the signal. 8. Expectation. It's quite hard for new companies to live up to customers' expectations. 9. Harm. We must keep in mind that smoking does us more harm than good. 10. Convenient. Traveling by private jet can be convenient provided you can afford to have one. 11. Suggest. I suggested to Mary that she come with me to collect empty cans on the street. 12. Decorate. The museum which I visited was beautifully decorated with antique furniture. 13. Passenger. When young passengers see a woman flying their plane, they come to accept female pilots as a natural phenomenon. 14. Payment. There are several tax payment options, whether you can pay in full right away or you need more time to come up with the money. 15. Dependent. Japan's industrialization has been heavily dependent on foreign sources of energy and raw materials. 16. Warn. The teacher let Tim go after warning him not to read comics in class. 17. Check. If your pain in your throat becomes worse, have it checked at once. 18. Proposal. The mayor turned down the proposal by the committee member. 19. Method. There is no reliable method of accurately predicting the time and place of an earthquake. 20. Dramatic. Climate change and environmental damage are 2 of the most dramatic challenges facing the world today. 21. Provide. Our company provides our customers with clothing at reasonable prices. 22. Admire. Helen Keller, admired for her work on behalf of people with disabilities, visited Japan 3 times. 23. Destination. Thanks to the good weather, we arrived at our destination an hour ahead of schedule. 24. Expert. In the past, the old used to be looked upon as experts in solving various problems in life. 25. Expensive. Making energy-saving changes in the home can be expensive, but it will save your money in the long run. 26. Participate. The most important thing in the Olympics is not to win but to participate. 27. Compare. Compared with the same period last year, industrial production rose by 1% this year. 28. Reason. The reason I get along well with my best friend is that we have many things in common. 29. Border. The Rio Grande is the river that forms a natural border between the United States and Mexico. 30. Responsible. He is responsible for preparing the report. 31. Force. Because he came down with the flu, he was forced to stay at home for a week. 32. Lend. I don't think my father is willing to lend us the car, but I'll see if I can talk him into it. 33. Attention. When you try on shoes, pay attention not only to their length but also to their depth and width. 34. Performance. I'm looking forward to your dance performance tomorrow night. 35. Similar. The microscope was developed using principles similar to the telescope. 36. Order. The package arrived late and, to make matters worse, it wasn't what we had ordered. 37. Trust. No matter how many friends you have, your problems can't be solved unless you have someone you can trust. 38. Theater. No child under the age of 16 will be admitted to the theater. 39. Survey. The researchers carried out a survey intended to measure the number of calories children get from regular meals each day. 40. Complete. To make it easier for the fish to adjust to new water, partial water changes are much better than complete water changes. 41. Display. He is an artist whose paintings are displayed in a museum in Paris. 42. Raise. Dad, if my grades improve by the end of the term, would you mind raising my allowance? 43. Atmosphere. Many cafes try to create a relaxing atmosphere so that customers can enjoy their tea break. 44. Neighbor. I saw a cat sneaking into my neighbor's yard. 45. Absent. In my school, when a regular teacher is absent, another teacher teaches the class instead. 46. Appeal. Benjamin Day is remembered as a revolutionary figure who showed that newspapers could appeal to a mass audience. 47. Explain. The engineer explained how to operate the sophisticated system. 48. Pressure. We've been working under so much pressure lately in our office that we all need a holiday. 49. Purchase. Products can be exchanged up to 2 months after purchase. 50. Obvious. From the look on his face, it was obvious that he did not get much sleep last night. 51. Celebrate. A tree is a unique gift to celebrate an important day such as your wedding anniversary. 52. Repair. Elevator mechanics are responsible for repairing elevators when they are out of order. 53. Permission. We made sure that the gate was locked so that no one could come into the factory without permission. 54. Forecast. During a weather forecast on television, you can see images of cloud patterns over Japan from the satellite. 55. Tight. Research suggests that tight clothing can cause all sorts of health problems. 56. Earn. Workers with college degrees earn significantly more than those without. 57. Avoid. We should avoid unexpected encounter with a wild creature in forest. 58. Medicine. It is very important for you to keep all medicines out of the reach of children. 59. Lack. They have to make up for their lack of experience with hard work. 60. Popular. Small cars are becoming more popular these days, since they are economical. 61. Imagine. In an increasingly connected world, many people can't imagine life without the internet. 62. Notice. Have you ever noticed the different approaches people use to deal with problems? 63. Production. Because of seasonable production patterns, the majority of Mexico's oranges arrive in the U.S. market from December through June. 64. Construction. The construction of the new building is underway. 65. Capable. According to the newspaper, even a teenager is capable of sailing a yacht around the world alone. 66. Shake. We nod our heads up and down for yes, and shake them left and right for no. 67. Treat. I am extremely fond of animals, and I can't stand anyone treating them with cruelty. 68. Neighborhood. The leaves in my neighborhood have recently turned yellow. 69. Evidence. There is evidence that TV leads people to accept more violence in everyday life. 70. Artificial. The restaurant was decorated with artificial flowers. 71. Regard. People, depending on their culture, may regard being on time differently. 72. Indicate. Many electrical goods have a small light to indicate that the power is on. 73. Statement. The following is the full text of the U.S.-North Korea joint statement released by the White House. 74. Reaction. For Kant, an 18th-century philosopher, laughter was a reaction to a sudden, unexpected change. 75. Regular. In addition to taking the regular tests, we have to hand in a long essay. 76. Practice. The more we practice for the concert, the better our performance will be. 77. Freeze. Substances freeze at exactly the same temperature as they melt. 78. Custom. Do you think it is necessary to observe the traditional customs? 79. Outcome. The teacher told us to predict the outcome of the experiment. 80. Tiny. The houses look like rows of tiny cardboard boxes when you look out of the window of a plane in flight. 81. Spread. Some diseases can spread only by direct physical contact. 82. Publish. Getting your biography published requires you to have a marketable story. 83. Path. We were robbed of our energy by the steep and narrow paths in the mountain. 84. Rumor. Local rumor has it that he was secretly buried in that church. 85. Curious. A curious crowd gathered at the site of the car accident and watched the outstanding performance of the rescue team. 86. Insist. The 18th-century philosopher Immanuel Kant insisted that all lies are harmful. 87. Encourage. Weather permitting, we encourage outdoor play as often as possible. 88. Memory. Before the exam I refreshed my memory by reading some old notes. 89. Advantage. Biotechnology could offer great advantages to the whole world. 90. Crowded. The museum was incredibly crowded with tourists struggling to see the Mona Lisa. 91. Export. Four species of kangaroo are exported commercially from Australia. 92. Descend. Descending a mountain is harder than ascending it. 93. Duty. After he joined the travel agency, he worked hard to improve his English in order to carry out his duties more effectively. 94. Operation. My mother is making a fast recovery after the operation on her knee last week. 95. Friendly. Fred and I once had a friendly argument over which makes a better pet, a dog or a cat. 96. Influence. The debate over how technology influences jobs is as old as industrial era itself. 97. Require. He was able to teach sports which often required a lot of strength and endurance. 98. Symbol. Images of elephants are symbols of good fortune in both India and Mexico. 99. Container. The refund will encourage people to recycle drink containers. 100. Ideal. A role model is an ideal person whom we admire and aspire to be like. 101. Reserve. The president had his secretary reserve a flight for New York. 102. Contact. Is it possible to contact the police via the internet if there is an emergency? 103. Attitude. Sylvia's attitudes toward the policy don't make sense to me. 104. Equipment. Today's best audio equipment almost recreates the sound quality of a live concert. 105. Brief. This brief explanation will serve as an introduction to the book. 106. Elect. It is likely that the president will be elected for another term. 107. Obtain. According to the law, you must be 18 years old or over to obtain a driver's license in Japan. 108. Privilege. As a member, you have the privilege of purchasing books at a 20% discount. 109. Eyesight. What does eating blueberries have to do with good eyesight? 110. Perfect. Use the following tips to pick the perfect roommate and avoid uncomfortable living situations. 111. Adopt. Some companies have adopted a new policy of using English as the official in-house language. 112. Travel. Sound travels at different speeds, depending on the temperature of the air. 113. Stare. The old lady was out of breath from climbing up the stairs. 114. Sensation. What insect bite causes a burning sensation? 115. Amazing. Walking into an electronics store today, consumers are faced with an amazing variety of audio technology. 116. Forgive. Many people think they are ready to forgive, but want an apology first. 117. Shout. I don't mind if you disagree with me, but I object to being shouted at. 118. Climate. The majority of the regions with Mediterranean climates have relatively mild winters and very warm summers. 119. Mankind. The most important function of animals to mankind is probably as a provider of food. 120. Previous. No previous experience is necessary for this job. 121. Guess. I guess listening to the boring lecture made me tired. 122. Attack. Bears rarely attack humans unless they feel threatened. 123. Decision. There was some exchange of opinions, but the decision was put off until next time. 124. Direction. Heavy industry is moving in the direction of more automated machines and less manpower. 125. Comfortable. In the 21st century, we can expect scientific advances to give more people than ever the means of leading a comfortable and easy life. 126. Attend. All the students who are interested in studying abroad should attend next week's meeting. 127. Announce. To our surprise, the mayor suddenly announced her resignation in spite of her high popularity. 128. Habit. Especially at the beginning of a new year, one question that frequently comes up is how to get rid of bad habits. 129. Departure. We delayed our departure on account of bad weather. 130. Stable. We all know that friendships are precious, but we also understand that friendships are not stable. 131. Develop. If George doesn't stop smoking, he will run the risk of developing lung cancer. 132. Support. The government promotes lifelong learning for the general public by supporting a variety of programs and providing necessary facilities. 133. Income. Seniors, no matter what their source of income, often struggle to make ends meet. 134. Politics. Did the result of the general election of July 1993 bring about important effects on Japanese politics? 135. Generous. Everyone was disappointed to hear that she had turned down the generous offer. 136. Rent. In spite of rising home costs, buying still beats renting. 137. Float. People can float in regular water, but since salt water is even denser, it is even easier to float in the Dead Sea. 138. Election. The election is one of the key elements of a democratic state. 139. View. A college education will enable you to get a broader view of the world. 140. Typical. A bowl of steamed rice is included in typical Japanese meals. 141. Realize. I came to realize the need to manage my time more effectively. 142. Regret. The short-tempered young man deeply regretted what he had said to his girlfriend as soon as he put the phone down. 143. Luggage. Would you mind keeping an eye on my luggage while I make a phone call? 144. Location. Doing business no longer relies on location. 145. Independent. Jane was already financially independent of her parents before she finished university. 146. Invent. Who is credited with inventing the telephone? 147. Remove. The company wants to sell its ability to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it underground. 148. Secret. A secret that you carry to the grave is something you never tell anyone during your entire lifetime. 149. Universe. Scientists are trying to figure out how the universe came into being. 150. Rapid. The rapid growth of fresh fruit imports has affected many aspects of the U.S. fresh fruit market. 151. Schedule. Can I schedule a delivery in advance? 152. Contain. Scientists believe that the Milky Way galaxy contains approximately 100 billion stars. 153. Destruction. All countries that are contributing to the destruction of rainforests should begin their own efforts to protect them. 154. Treasure. Should cultural treasures be returned to their country of origin? 155. Evident. It is evident that a big mistake was made in calculating the costs of the project. 156. Steal. What should I do if my wallet is lost or stolen? 157. Perform. Dance is performed for a variety of purposes. 158. Flood. Sometimes, there is heavy rain for a very short period that result in floods. 159. Will. Strong will is the most essential quality for anyone who wants to achieve success. 160. Successful. The meeting was successful even though no clear conclusion was reached.
161. Cross. When driving near a school, watch out for children crossing the road. 162. Judge. You should know better than to judge by appearance. 163. Volunteer. Those living in Tokyo seem to be less involved in volunteer work than the nation as a whole. 164. Assignment. Nearly half of the students didn't turn in the assignment. 165. Healthy. Getting the right amount of sleep is important for keeping ourselves healthy. 166. Recommend. My friend Maria recommended a movie based on a best-selling novel, and she told me my favorite actor was starring in it. 167. Accompany. Children 11 years and younger receive free admission when accompanied by an adult. 168. Pity. It's a pity you were unable to join the party. 169. Principle. It is against my principles to borrow money. 170. Intellectual. Because of artificial intelligence AI, skilled white-collar workers, or intellectual workers, are also at high risk. 171. Search. Spending less time outside the home searching for food reduces the risk of being killed by other animals. 172. Concentrate. It has been hard to concentrate on my studies lately because a road is being built in front of my house. 173. Candidate. I want to vote for a candidate who will try to reduce unemployment. 174. Author. Treasure Island is an adventure novel by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. 175. Sensitive. She is so sensitive that she cried for days when her pet died. 176. Switch. The bicycle lanes may persuade motorists in the city to switch from cars to bicycles. 177. Envy. Many people want to speak a second language fluently, and bilingual people are often admired or even envied. 178. Exercise. Exercise burns calories, offsetting the calories you take in and helping you maintain an appropriate weight. 179. Harbor. The Nagasaki port is a natural harbor that is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. 180. Domestic. The U.S. domestic market receives orange imports from various countries and regions. 181. Expect. I expect all of you to be here 5 minutes before the test begins, without fail. 182. Describe. The story describes a young woman who moves to the countryside with her husband when he tries to escape his busy life in the city. 183. Emotion. You should not let your personal emotions stand in the way of making that important decision. 184. Praise. Giving students effective praise is an important part of teaching. 185. Lazy. He is by nature a lazy person, so we don't expect too much from him. 186. Reduce. In recent years, people have become more health conscious and consequently have reduced the amount of fat they eat. 187. Guard. Before a dog can be trained to guard your property, you must teach basic commands. 188. Colleague. The boss regrets employing him because he makes a lot of trouble with colleagues. 189. Study. A study shows that Japanese women bow more often than men. 190. Visible. You can get a decent Milky Way photo even when it's barely visible to the naked eye. 191. Fear. Many scientists fear that there may be far fewer polar bears, thanks to the effects of climate change. 192. Rely. The pilots that have landed at the wrong airports in the past have all been relying on visual information. 193. Existence. Both children and adults alike wonder about the existence of ghosts. 194. Closet. Keeping your closet organized will help you keep your room neat and tidy. 195. Brave. Someone pulling an injured person out of a crashed car after an accident is considered brave. 196. Defend. We must defend our right to privacy. 197. Recognize. Animals rely on the sense of smell to find food, to find mates, and to recognize their enemies. 198. Remedy. A good remedy for a headache is an aspirin and a glass of water. 199. Burden. Men say they are willing to share the burden of domestic work. 200. Anxious. School administrators in California are anxious about the cuts proposed in the state budget. 201. Prepare. I'm afraid I am not prepared to take the risk of losing all my money. 202. Convince. No one was convinced by his explanation at the press conference. 203. Government. Today, the vast majority of governments around the world do not allow couples of the same sex to marry. 204. Maintenance. The elevators are out of service for regular maintenance. 205. Vacant. Can I change seats after boarding if there is a vacant seat? 206. Hide. Hiding cash and valuables at home can be risky business. 207. Generate. Wind electricity is a form of renewable energy that uses airflow to generate electricity. 208. Posture. People have long assumed that posture has played some role in back pain. 209. Legend. According to local legend, if the person bathes naked, they will definitely be eaten by crocodiles, for sure. 210. Nervous. I am accustomed to public speaking, so I don't get nervous in front of large groups. 211. Express. Expressing gratitude can make all the difference in your relationship. 212. Consult. How much does it cost to consult a lawyer for legal advice? 213. Sorrow. Joy and sorrow are the light and shade of life. 214. Population. Japan's population density has helped promote extremely high land prices. 215. Missing. The police called off the search for the missing child until dawn tomorrow. 216. Assign. In high school I was assigned longer texts which had a larger vocabulary. 217. Exhibit. The rocket will be exhibited to the public at the Smithsonian Museum. 218. Presentation. Her presentation left nothing to be desired. 219. Agriculture. One of the reasons for the growth of agriculture in California was to feed the large population there. 220. Wealthy. Do you need to be wealthy to realize a childhood dream of becoming an astronaut? 221. Disappear. My confidence as a swimmer started to disappear the day Angela moved to our small town. 222. Prevent. There are a number of measures that you can take to prevent the spread of viruses and bacteria. 223. Inquiry. The company has received quite a few inquiries from its customers. 224. Resource. The richest 20% of the world's population consume 86% of the world resources. 225. Positive. We received a lot of positive feedback on the new plan. 226. Wipe. There are many health problems that can arise if you don't wipe your sweat. 227. Arise. Concern about the possibility of mobile phones having ill effects on health arose in the mid-1990s. 228. Shortage. An increase in the population of a species may lead to food shortages. 229. Flavor. Fresh, local vegetables are so delicious that little work is needed to bring out its flavor. 230. Rude. I had no choice but to put up with the guest's rude behavior. 231. Inquire. The product you inquired about is out of stock now. 232. Heal. When a wound heals, it may eventually turn into a scar. 233. Assistance. In a crisis, emergency financial assistance can help you pay for living expenses. 234. Feature. The huge network of canals is a fascinating feature of the old city. 235. Formal. Throughout his life, Thomas Edison maintained that formal education had not made him. 236. Allow. It was the control of fire and the use of clothing that allowed humans to settle in the cold northern areas. 237. Intend. Ireland was the first nation to pass a law intended to reduce the use of plastic bags. 238. Distinction. We have to make a clear distinction between public matters and private affairs. 239. Appreciation. Although I was extremely familiar with the book, watching the movie increased my appreciation of the original story. 240. Disgusting. Eating insects is considered as disgusting or even primitive in Western societies. 241. Fulfill. To fulfill your dream, you need to take a little risk. 242. Bark. It was quiet night, and the only sound to be heard was a dog barking in the distance. 243. Article. My aunt often translates articles submitted to international medical journals. 244. Shore. Why are waves always parallel to the shore on approaching the seashore? 245. Cruel. It is cruel to hunt animals for sport. 246. Preserve. Before refrigerators became common, vinegar was vitally important in preserving food in the form of pickles. 247. Greet. Manners of greeting vary from country to country. 248. Envelope. Postcards are usually mailed without an envelope. 249. Horizon. Why does the sun appear larger on the horizon than overhead? 250. Objective. Do you think objective journalism exists? 251. Interrupt. The game on the main court was interrupted by a brief shower. 252. Stir. She stirred the mixture until it got to the boiling point. 253. Mission. What kinds of missions are conducted by the Army? 254. Debt. The national debt of Japan has grown to more than twice the country's annual gross domestic product. 255. Preferable. When you have to drive, it's preferable to use a vehicle that includes eco-friendly features. 256. Ensure. Installing a smoke alarm does not ensure the safety of your family. 257. Revive. It is estimated that considerable investment will be necessary to revive the country's tourism industry. 258. Sign. Can you make out what that sign says? 259. Vegetation. In the Himalaya mountains, the vegetation changes according to the altitude. 260. Diligent. To be called a diligent and thorough worker is the highest form of praise. 261. Replace. Eventually, the 20 primary teeth are replaced by 32 permanent teeth. 262. Apply. You can apply for this scholarship on the condition that you have a letter of recommendation from your teacher. 263. Device. First-time smartphone buyers may be surprised their new device doesn't come with instructions. 264. Wisdom. I owe the progress I have made in English to the wisdom of my aunt. 265. Bare. Gloves are a great solution for avoiding bare hand contact, but they can be inconvenient. 266. Retire. Employees are supposed to retire at the age of 60 in our company. 267. Adjust. Going through all the steps to adjust the brightness of my computer screen is a real nuisance. 268. Wage. In Japan, minimum wage depends on the industry and the region. 269. Architecture. He graduated at the top of his class with degrees in architecture and city planning. 270. Delicate. Ecosystems must maintain a delicate balance in order to stay vital. 271. Broadcast. The address will be broadcast live on ABC. 272. Derive. Most of the English words derived from Latin and Greek roots. 273. Disaster. The European heat wave is one of the horrible natural disasters happened in the world. 274. Patient. To recover his strength, the patient was made to raise his arms above his head many times every day. 275. Messy. When a neat person lives with someone who is more inclined to be messy, it can cause quite a few problems. 276. Cancel. Can I cancel my booking if there's been an emergency? 277. Suspend. Students cannot take part in school activities or events while suspended. 278. Dinosaur. It is very rare to come across a skeleton of a whole dinosaur, though it does occur from time to time. 279. Necessity. A car is an absolute necessity if you live in the countryside. 280. Subjective. Grading artwork has traditionally been a subjective activity. 281. Pretend. I could tell he was only pretending to read, because his book was upside down. 282. Blame. The politician was blamed for not carrying out his campaign promises. 283. Stimulus. There is a decrease in response to a stimulus after being repeatedly exposed to it. 284. Desert. The smooth surface of the desert makes it possible for camels to transport goods easily. 285. Rural. When you travel to rural Japan, the impacts of population decline become apparent. 286. Complain. So far as I am concerned, I have nothing to complain of. 287. Establish. Japan contributed greatly toward establishing the International Year of the Volunteer. 288. Cliff. Mr. Brown looked over the cliff and found he was standing at the edge of a vertical drop. 289. Tide. Understanding tides and currents will help you stay safe if you like to go swimming in the sea. 290. Abroad. Bill had to leave his family behind when he went abroad to work. 291. Register. All vehicles, new and used, must be registered before operating them. 292. Breathe. Certain individuals, whether children or adults, have a tendency to breathe through the mouth instead of the nose. 293. Courage. It took a great deal of courage for the early explorers to set sail for distant places. 294. Leisure. Due to the leisure brought about by technology, many people have the problem of adapting to a new way of life. 295. Thin. Shabu shabu is a delicious Japanese dish consisting of thin slices of meat or fish. 296. Equip. Consumers prefer to purchase a computer equipped with a touch screen. 297. Regulate. Gun laws in the United States regulate the sale, possession, and use of firearms. 298. Donation. This botanical garden was established in 2000 from citizen donations. 299. Entrance. The high security at the entrance prevented us from going into the building. 300. Promising. Given the ocean's power, wave energy seems a promising source of renewable energy. 301. Scold. It seems that there is an unspoken rule that you can't scold another person's child. 302. Expire. I have to get my commuter pass renewed because it expires tomorrow. 303. Respect. People in big cities seldom talk to strangers out of respect for the privacy of others. 304. Shame. There's no shame in reaching out for professional help. 305. Intelligent. Human skulls contain brains around 3 times as large as those of even the most intelligent apes. 306. Survive. Human beings have survived so far but could now be risking their future. 307. Confess. When the police questioned him, he broke down and confessed. 308. Flow. Europe has long been a popular destination in global migration flows. 309. Triumph. Let me congratulate you on your triumph in the tournament. 310. Trivial. There are so many reasons why people fight over trivial things. 311. Compose. A water molecule is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. 312. Sink. Over 100 years ago, the Titanic sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean in less than 3 hours. 313. Exception. There is no rule but has some exceptions. 314. Journey. During the rest of that day there was no other adventure to disrupt the peace of their journey. 315. Peculiar. When you sit in the car after it has been parked in the sun for a few hours, you'll notice a peculiar smell in the car. 316. Obey. Drivers always have to strictly obey the speed limit of the road. 317. Deserve. The judges all agreed that the group deserved the top prize for their amazing performance. 318. Obligation. Helping the poor has been considered an obligation by major religions. 319. Noise. When noise becomes irritating or harmful, it is considered pollution. 320. Fragile. A new study shows that business friendships are fragile. 321. Postpone. All things considered, the Chorus Club decided to postpone its winter concert. 322. Pour. Investors tend to pour money in as markets near a peak. 323. Boom. Many of the castles in Japan are crowded with quite a few young people because of the recent history boom. 324. Plain. That he was tired was plain to see. 325. Accordingly. Consumers' tastes vary, and markets meet their demands accordingly. 326. Adapt. Even if immigrants work very hard in their new country, they might find it difficult to adapt themselves to the new culture. 327. Associate. The greenhouse effect is thought to be associated with global warming. 328. Exhibition. Art criticism will enable the viewer to appreciate an exhibition better. 329. Conference. A conference was held to discuss the various benefits of using insects as an alternative source of food to pigs, chickens, and cows. 330. Punctual. Trains in Japan are incredibly punctual. 331. Differ. Some people are apt to consider their own way of life as being the normal one and to look down on lifestyles that differ from it. 332. Monitor. Watching TV programs can be good for the education of children if it is carefully monitored. 333. Access. 3 of 5 people in the world still do not have access to the Internet. 334. Temptation. You must not yield to temptation. 335. Suspicious. The detective thinks the man he interviewed today is suspicious. 336. Tackle. Michael tackles tough problems on a daily basis, but he always finds solutions. 337. Imitate. Video games may make children imitate improper behavior. 338. Impact. Many studies point to the negative impacts of social media on mental health. 339. Literature. As is often the case with literature, Herman Melville was recognized for his best work long after it was written. 340. Eager. After getting out of college, graduates are eager to join an organization where they will be able to utilize their skills. 341. Disappoint. The company president was disappointed with the poor performance of her new secretary. 342. Frustrate. One of the reasons customers get frustrated about long wait times is that they're on their feet or stuck in place. 343. Communication. To improve communication, it is important to recognize differences in values. 344. Eternal. The hotel can organize a special ceremony to exchange vows of eternal love. 345. Precisely. It's not easy to define sleep precisely. 346. Correct. Admitting and correcting mistakes does not make you look weak, it actually makes you look stronger. 347. Stare. Staring at the sun without proper eye protection is a clearly bad idea. 348. Fate. The fate of the many homeless dogs is tragic. 349. Fever. My grandmother always said you should sweat to reduce the fever when you have the flu. 350. Upset. Bruce was terribly upset when his girlfriend left him, but he soon got over it. 351. Quit. Permanent employees remain employed until they are fired or choose to quit. 352. Illustrate. This picture illustrates a method of protection utilized by many animals. 353. Genius. Can hard work and sincere effort beat inborn genius? 354. Witness. Police are appealing for witnesses after a large sum of cash was stolen. 355. Temporary. More and more companies have tried to hire temporary workers lately. 356. Reflect. A great movie usually reflects its director's creative vision in the story or in the way it is told. 357. Confuse. It is common for people to confuse fact and opinion. 358. Religion. Many religions forbid alcoholic consumption or see it as sinful. 359. Anxiety. A job interview can make even the most confident person tremble with anxiety. 360. Subtle. Despite similarities, there are subtle differences between a cult and a religion. 361. Spare. Susan gave up her job, so she has a lot of time to spare. 362. Identify. The number of claws is important in identifying a wolf's footprint. 363. Humidity. The effects of humidity on the human body can be profound and numerous. 364. Inferior. Processed foods are in some way inferior to their unprocessed counterparts. 365. Accidentally. Accidentally eating meat is the worst thing that can happen to you if you're a vegetarian. 366. Sponsor. The event was sponsored by several local businesses. 367. Vanish. What would become of our planet if humans were to vanish? 368. Attraction. Located 30 kilometers from Paris, the theme park offers you many attractions that will entertain your family. 369. Representative. The representatives made a plan for the school festival, and the other students carried it out. 370. Outstanding. The story was outstanding, but his acting was anything but excellent. 371. Investigate. Not even 1% of the species in today's rainforests have been investigated by researchers. 372. Reject. Although he had a lot of experience in teaching, John's application for the position of full-time professor was rejected. 373. Competition. Fierce competition between companies in the airline industry had led to lower prices and improved services. 374. Conscience. He struggled with his conscience after he committed the crime. 375. Loyal. The bond between a loyal dog and a caring owner is unbreakable, even between life and death. 376. Resemble. Of all preserved foods, frozen foods most resemble fresh foods. 377. Appoint. She became the first woman appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. 378. Suburb. Would you prefer living in the city, suburbs, or country? 379. Discrimination. There is a large movement against discrimination on the basis of race in that country. 380. Ordinary. The recent rise in the price of land have meant that ordinary people can no longer afford to buy houses of their own. 381. Confirm. It has yet to be confirmed whether there are any survivors of the accident. 382. Distribute. For centuries newspapers were printed on paper and distributed to readers. 383. Combination. Jazz fusion is a combination of rock and jazz. 384. Moderate. You should be able to carry on a conversation if you are doing a moderate exercise. 385. Regularly. In most supermarkets, foods which people buy regularly may be located in different parts of the store on purpose. 386. Crawl. When the rocks have finally stopped falling, we crawled out of the cave. 387. Award. Mr. Suzuki is a top salesperson for a cosmetics company who has been awarded many prizes for his performance. 388. Dispute. A meeting of the two nations' foreign ministers finally put an end to the dispute. 389. Measure. To improve business performance, the company decided to resort to drastic measures. 390. Thick. Thick eyeglasses sometimes make you feel like the weight of the world is on your nose. 391. Worry. It never occurred to me that my actions had worried my parents. 392. Spoil. Is it child abuse for parents to spoil their children too much? 393. Justice. Throughout history, many individuals have fought for justice and equality. 394. Temper. I can't put up with her temper any longer. 395. Thirsty. The soldiers became desperately thirsty in the heat. 396. Punish. He was punished for selling violent video games to minors. 397. Respond. The ability to interpret the signals given by other people, and to respond effectively, is clearly important for success in life. 398. Individual. Whether or not a task is pleasant depends on the individual. 399. Trade. International trade allows countries to buy what we want from other countries. 400. Radical. Radical Islam is not only a religion but also a political movement. 401. Benefit. Physical activity in your childhood, such as playing sports and exercising, can greatly benefit your health when you are older. 402. Capture. The thief was nearly captured by the police but managed to escape. 403. Means. Computers were a means for the girls, but an end for the boys. 404. Receipt. After you pay a bill, you are given a receipt to show that you have paid. 405. Superior. With their superior fuel economy and performance, hybrid vehicles will likely increase in popularity. 406. Apologize. Learn how to acknowledge your mistakes and appropriately apologize. 407. Miss. We had better leave soon, otherwise we will miss the train. 408. Discipline. Do school uniforms promote discipline and a sense of belonging? 409. Myth. It is a myth that all men are born equal. 410. Acceptable. In most cases, students can determine what clothing is acceptable to wear to school. 411. Exhaust. We were all exhausted after 10-kilometer run, so our coach gave us a break. 412. Hesitate. If you suspect you have cancer, don't hesitate to see the doctor. 413. Category. His music does not fit easily into the category of jazz. 414. Habitat. Many endangered species are threatened with extinction due to loss of habitats such as rainforests. 415. Virtual. Can virtual reality be a substitute for real-life experiences? 416. Impress. The audience was impressed by the pianist's amazing technique. 417. Extend. Could I extend the rental period for the car? 418. Interaction. Translation has played a central role in human interaction for thousands of years. 419. Correspondence. For centuries, the only form of written correspondence was the letter. 420. Exact. Knowing an exact number of intended party guests will help make your party planning easier. 421. Attempt. Any adult who has attempted to learn a foreign language knows how difficult and confusing it can be. 422. Delight. I'm so delighted to hear from one of my high school classmates. 423. Prestige. Is the prestige of hosting the Olympics on the decline? 424. Symptom. The stress symptoms many of the programmers had was depression. 425. Conventional. Electric cars do away with many of the mechanical systems that prompt consumer complaints about conventional cars. 426. Distinguish. By observing many friends, you'll gain skills to distinguish trustworthy people from others. 427. Fascinate. For thousands of years, humans have been fascinated by the planets in our solar system. 428. Trend. According to this magazine, next summer is sure to bring new fashion trends from Europe. 429. Formation. Anyone watching the autumn sky knows that migrating birds fly in a V formation. 430. Neutral. Both parties involved in the dispute agree to use a neutral third party to help solve the dispute. 431. Approve. The Houston City Council has unanimously approved a sister city agreement between Houston, Texas and Basra, Iraq. 432. Cooperate. As a member of the international community, each country has a duty to cooperate with other nations. 433. Profit. The lure of huge profits drove them into a crime which eventually led them into prison. 434. Patience. If he had had a little more patience, Mr. Lee would not have left his company. 435. Content. The ambitious young are not content with a small success. 436. Oppose. There are many reasons to oppose the use of nuclear energy. 437. Pray. This park is considered a sacred place where we can pray for the souls of the dead. 438. Belief. Forget the common belief that you have to suffer in order to make progress. 439. Capacity. Each bus is required to post the maximum seating capacity at the front of the vehicle. 440. Legal. The Supreme Court made same-sex marriage legal throughout the United States. 441. Represent. Labor unions exist for a wide variety of professions, representing everyone from construction workers to doctors. 442. Urge. He urges students to value the process of thinking, and not just getting the right answer. 443. Evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is based much of what he discovered in the Galapagos Islands. 444. Poverty. It is mainly the rapid increase of population which causes the poverty in that country. 445. Worth. The price is by no means cheap, but the room is worth the price. 446. Appreciate. I would appreciate it if you would give me some information on your products. 447. Enroll. In Japan, regardless of nationality, all children have the rights to enroll in public schools free of charge. 448. Reward. Studying hard in school might not give high school students any immediate rewards. 449. Routine. Technology has altered morning routines of many American families. 450. Flexible. Are flexible working hours practical for small businesses? 451. Found. ABB Company was founded by a descendant of a famous samurai from Kyushu. 452. Abandon. The vast majority of abandoned pets never make it out of shelters alive. 453. Consent. I'm afraid your parents will never give their consent to your trip abroad. 454. Cure. Dr. Brown came up with a novel cure for the fatal disease. 455. Awkward. He used chopsticks in an awkward way. 456. Consist. Our residence hall consists of 2 dormitories separated into female and male. 457. Release. Children need to release their energy for their mental and physical health. 458. Merchant. The famous explorer Marco Polo was born in the year 1254 to a family of merchants. 459. Spectator. Athletes, coaches, and spectators all agree that no one likes to lose. 460. Conscious. Human beings are hardly conscious of their surroundings while they are asleep. 461. Acquire. Older people usually find it more difficult to acquire the new skills required by technological changes. 462. Oversee. Architects should not assume responsibility to oversee the construction works. 463. Pollution. The best way to avoid air pollution is to stay away from car traffic. 464. Account. The novel is not so much a detailed explanation of a historic event as it is a personal account of what happened. 465. Enormous. The rainforest has an enormous biodiversity. 466. Inform. I informed the employees of our president's arrival. 467. Plant. Planting date is one of the many factors that affect crop yield potential. 468. Treatment. The cost of treatment at the hospital is much lower for those who have health insurance. 469. Misunderstanding. Before you rent an apartment, find out as much about it as possible in order that there will be no misunderstanding. 470. General. If we want to make ourselves understood in English, we need not only good language skills but also clear thinking and a broad general knowledge. 471. Guarantee. Universal human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law. 472. Occupy. A number of territories occupied by the United States after 1945 have been returned to Japan. 473. Institution. By using a financial institution, you don't have to carry large amounts of cash. 474. Penalty. He appealed to the referee for a penalty kick. 475. Reliable. Do we need a more reliable online encyclopedia than Wikipedia? 476. Annoy. Annoyed by a group of kids talking loudly on the train, someone said, "Shut up." 477. Persuade. We tried to persuade her not to quit school, but our efforts were in vain. 478. Fair. There's a common misconception that one-way tickets are always half the price of a round-trip fare. 479. Illusion. It is an illusion to think that you can control earthquakes. 480. Remarkable. Bats have a remarkable homing instinct.
481. Unite. If all of Europe united to form a single country, how powerful would it be? 482. Prohibit. Not all countries have agreed to prohibit weapons of mass destruction such as chemical and nuclear weapons. 483. Labor. Today, many people doing physical labor are worried that robots will take over their roles and that they will lose their current jobs. 484. Ecosystem. While hunting has caused extreme damage to the wolf population, careful reintroduction can help the ecosystem. 485. Widespread. Overall, the widespread use of the Internet has a mostly positive effect on life in today's world. 486. Orbit. The Earth orbits the Sun because of the pull of the Sun's gravity. 487. Specialize. Tokyo has a number of districts where many shops specialize in a particular kind of item. 488. Miracle. Every day a small miracle occurs without anyone paying slightest attention. 489. Qualification. Susan is studying at university to get the qualification she needs to teach science at high school. 490. Nutritional. Does the nutritional value of eggs depend on the way you cook them? 491. Undergo. All vehicles must undergo regular vehicle inspections. 492. Interact. All organisms, to greater or lesser degrees, interact continuously with their physical environment and with each other. 493. Perspective. People would like to see a movie that they can associate with but that is told from a unique perspective. 494. Target. NATO admitted one of its bombs missed its target and hit a residential area. 495. Indispensable. Maps are indispensable to geography as a telescope is to astronomy or a microscope to biology. 496. Conclude. We shouldn't conclude that there is any connection between nationality and personality. 497. Delete. I think I deleted that document we were working on. 498. Solid. Melting is a process that causes a substance to change from a solid to a liquid. 499. Interval. The contents on this website are checked and updated at regular intervals. 500. Genuine. How can I distinguish a genuine antique from a reproduction? 501. Restore. Your support and kindness have restored my self-respect. 502. Declare. The colony declared independence and became a republic. 503. Issue. Many people have been arguing for or against the issue of building a nuclear power plant. 504. Constitution. Japan's current constitution has not been amended since it took effect just after World War II. 505. Modest. Low-impact activities, due to their modest load, are less likely to cause injury. 506. Resign. When you reach a point where stress is too high, you may find yourself wanting to resign from your job. 507. Resume. In 2005, Himawari 6 was launched and the supply of weather photos from Japanese satellites resumed. 508. Civilization. Vinegar was an important discovery for ancient civilizations which remains useful even today. 509. Recipe. The recipe for tempura was introduced by Portuguese missionaries in the 16th century. 510. Imaginary. Throughout the world, people enjoy telling each other stories about imaginary monsters. 511. Cease. The fact that a volcano hasn't erupted in a long while doesn't mean that volcanic activity has ceased. 512. Employ. If you intend to employ foreign nationals in Japan, it is necessary to make sure that they legally have the right to work in Japan. 513. Tuition. The basic tuition fee depends on how early you pay. 514. Deadline. If the hotel's cancellation deadline has passed, you won't get a refund. 515. Vague. The contract should be specific and should avoid vague descriptions or definitions. 516. Impose. Some government agencies impose pet owners fines if their animals chase, harm, or kill wildlife. 517. Launch. A new TV commercial will appear when the coffee product is launched next month. 518. Exploration. Space exploration has helped us answer questions asked in science fiction novels and movies. 519. Prosperity. The ancient city reached its peak of prosperity in the 3rd century. 520. Mysterious. The speaker entertained the audience with his mysterious crime story. 521. Seize. They have been killed or forced out of the rainforests by outsiders who have seized land for profit. 522. Imply. To criticize does not necessarily imply to find fault. 523. Caution. Winter driving calls for extra caution, with more snow and ice to deal with, and less daylight. 524. Confidence. Local officials must stick to their promises if they are to win back public confidence. 525. Polite. Fortunately, there are some easy tactics you can use to help raise a more polite child. 526. Serve. There are several practical reasons people cook fish before eating it, rather than simply serving it raw. 527. Stimulate. Our organization plans to stimulate economic development in this area. 528. Application. The application of scientific knowledge helps satisfy many basic human needs. 529. Obstacle. Newton had an astonishing ability to persist in the face of the obstacles. 530. Enthusiastic. I have always been an enthusiastic, if not gifted, sportsman, preferring to play rather than watch. 531. Transform. Robots have transformed many industries, most notably manufacturing, and have the power to deliver tremendous benefits to society. 532. Yield. Real estate investments do not always yield profit. 533. Harmony. Japanese people have always put an emphasis on harmony. 534. Relief. A cooling night breeze brought relief from the heat. 535. Contemporary. Contemporary immigrants range from unskilled laborers to highly skilled professionals. 536. Possess. As an entrepreneur, the main quality you must possess is the burning desire to start that dream business. 537. Convert. Converting from kilograms to pounds is a common task in the realms of math and engineering. 538. Satisfaction. The ability to delay satisfaction using free will turns out to be a strong sign of future success. 539. Consequence. We all need to start using social media responsibly, or face the consequences. 540. Essential. Successful reproduction is essential to the survival of a species. 541. Note. Please note that we are not responsible for the accuracy or content of any sites linked from our own site. 542. Divide. There can be disagreements about how to divide profits. 543. Stereotype. Simply put, gender stereotypes are generalizations about the roles of each gender. 544. Background. The workplace brings together people of many different backgrounds. 545. Military. Why do people in Japan protest USA military bases? 546. Designate. Washiku, or the traditional Japanese cuisine, has been designated by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. 547. Organize. Social media has been playing a role in helping protesters organize and draw international attention. 548. Engagement. Can I cancel marriage after engagement? 549. Slave. Once upon a time the island had plantations on which a lot of slaves were forced to work. 550. Gradual. Researchers suggest that behavior changes in the elderly may be caused by the gradual shrinking of the brain. 551. Neglect. He was blamed for neglecting his duties. 552. Donate. Are rich people obligated to donate to charity? 553. Mammal. Humans are classified as mammals because humans have the same distinctive features found in all members of this large group. 554. Infant. New studies are finding that introducing peanuts to infants earlier actually helps prevent allergies. 555. Initial. London has exceeded its initial Olympics budget by a wide margin. 556. Engage. Students in Japan are now engaging more in practical activities and less in memorization of facts in class. 557. Expose. Scientists have speculated that the destruction of Earth's ozone layer would expose us to damaging ultraviolet rays. 558. Incident. The driver of a vehicle must report a traffic crash when the incident occurred on a road. 559. Infection. The best way to prevent infection from spreading is good hand hygiene. 560. Concrete. When you make a speech, use more concrete words than abstract words. 561. Dispose. As with all issues surrounding nuclear technology, where and how to dispose of the wastes is complicated. 562. Revise. Authors revise their manuscripts using the comments and suggestions from reviewers. 563. Luxury. An internet connection used to be a luxury, but nowadays it's taken for granted. 564. Controversy. One of the greatest controversies to come out of World War II was whether the atomic bomb was necessary to bring about the war's end. 565. Profound. Endlessness is probably the most profound and challenging idea of basic math. 566. Attach. You need to attach your photo to the application form. 567. Activate. Reading detailed descriptions in literary works activates many areas of the brain besides the language regions. 568. Insight. Your feedback has provided us with helpful information and keen insights. 569. Authority. The study suggested that ordinary people are likely to follow orders given by an authority figure. 570. Upcoming. As you pack for your upcoming flight, take a moment to think about what would happen if your baggage were lost. 571. Explore. Because of its small size, just 8 kilometers from north to south, Paris is perfect for exploring on foot. 572. Demonstrate. Picasso demonstrated extraordinary artistic talent in his early years. 573. Liberty. The 3 colors of the French national flag stand for liberty, equality, and fraternity. 574. Glance. A glance at this map will tell you where we are. 575. Sufficient. Water scarcity is the lack of sufficient available water resources to meet water needs within a region. 576. Overwhelm. I remember visiting a professor's office and being overwhelmed by the huge number of books. 577. Comprehend. If someone tries to explain a theory from physics or mathematics which we cannot comprehend, we could say, "It's all Greek to me." 578. Review. When writing a food or restaurant review, include as many useful details as possible for the reader. 579. Restriction. Freedom of speech and expression is protected from government restrictions. 580. Scarce. When snowfall is scarce, ski resorts use artificial snow to compensate. 581. Claim. Many major newspapers claim that they are unbiased and entirely devoted to freely presenting facts and truth. 582. Argue. Most politicians in this city are currently arguing for or against building a new highway. 583. Psychology. Sigmund Freud is usually referred to as the father of modern psychology and was one of the primary pioneers of psychoanalysis. 584. Dignity. Massive unemployment represents the most serious threat to human dignity. 585. Jealous. Don't waste energy in people who are jealous of your success. 586. Emerge. An outbreak of Ebola has emerged in the Democratic Republic of Congo. 587. Condemn. The failure of leaders to condemn corruption serves to increase the spread of corruption. 588. Sightseeing. Mount Fuji and Kyoto have traditionally been popular sightseeing spots for overseas tourists to Japan. 589. Structure. Although cells may be very different and highly specialized, they all have the same basic structure. 590. Evil. The ancient Romans believed that the right side of the body was the good side, while the left side held evil spirits. 591. Assure. Orders should be received by 2 p.m. to assure same-day delivery. 592. Commute. The differences in the ways people commute can be quite large when cities around the world are compared. 593. Race. Pictures and slogans which are offensive to race and gender should not be allowed. 594. Worship. Shinto is a native Japanese religion based on nature worship. 595. Ignorant. Many young people these days seem to be ignorant of what they are seeking after. 596. Weigh. She is careful about her diet and makes sure to weigh herself every morning. 597. Sustain. The brain, heart and lungs are the vital organs to sustain human life. 598. Potential. Social network sites have the potential to change fundamentally the character of our social lives. 599. Productivity. Many companies have to reduce their development costs while improving productivity. 600. Marvelous. There is no doubt the Internet is a marvelous invention. 601. Bother. When we are trying to study or think about something, music can bother us if it is too loud or too harsh. 602. Resolve. Taking simple steps to resolve conflict immediately can prevent many workplace conflicts from escalating. 603. Migration. The Irish famine caused the first mass migration of Irish people to the United States. 604. Biology. In the U.S., about 60% of medical school applicants majored in biology as undergraduates. 605. Cautious. Parents and teachers are cautious about the risk associated with SNS use. 606. Ache. Can the weather make bones and joints ache? 607. Foster. Foster mutual respect among your students, even when class discussion covers controversial topics. 608. Amusement. Origami, the art of folding paper, is now enjoyed by many people in many countries for amusement. 609. Convention. Keeping to conventions prevents us from making new products. 610. Consistent. At the Diet meeting, the Prime Minister's explanation was not always consistent. 611. Accommodate. The largest conference hall can accommodate up to 100 people. 612. Inspire. Chief executives are taking greater personal responsibility for directing and inspiring innovation. 613. Term. The term, native speaker of English, has been subject to a great variety of interpretations. 614. Masterpiece. With all its minor defects, the novel has been regarded as a masterpiece. 615. Logical. Logical reasoning helps us explain why something happens. 616. Conserve. The costs of not conserving biodiversity will be substantial for present and future generations. 617. Dedicate. There are many websites dedicated to matching volunteers with opportunities. 618. Relative. If you are an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, you can become a lawful permanent resident. 619. Resignation. The Prime Minister's abrupt resignation has thrown Japan's political landscape into uncertainty. 620. Equivalent. Snowflake did live a long life for a gorilla, about 40 years, which is equivalent to 80 years for a human. 621. Accuse. If you are accused of a crime, you have the right to be treated as innocent until you are proved guilty. 622. Shift. Before we enact changes to health care, we must shift our focus from treatment to prevention. 623. Prejudice. To take advantage of foreign tourism, Japan should overcome prejudice against foreigners. 624. Grocery. Most supermarkets in Japan are actually better described as grocery stores, in that they exclusively sell food. 625. Selfish. He gets on my nerves with his selfish and arrogant ways. 626. Retain. The greenhouse effect causes the atmosphere to retain heat. 627. Swallow. Swallowing prevents food from remaining in the mouth long enough for any significant amount of digestion to occur. 628. Destiny. The destiny versus free will debate has been going on forever. 629. Adolescence. Today, We believe that essential aspects of character are formed in childhood and adolescence. 630. Absurd. It is absurd to understand laughter. 631. Puzzle. He looked puzzled at the abrupt question posed by a reporter. 632. Substitute. You can substitute olive oil for butter, margarine, or other oils in almost any recipe. 633. Wealth. Economic growth refers broadly to an increase in wealth over a certain period of time. 634. Welfare. Black families are often portrayed as poor and welfare dependent. 635. Memorable. Seeing bear in the wild can be one of the most memorable experiences on camping trips. 636. Ruin. The flood ruined the crops. 637. Sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to pursue your passion? 638. Specimen. Plant collecting is the acquisition of plant specimens for the purposes of research, cultivation, or as a hobby. 639. Intersection. Many residents want to put a traffic light at the intersection. 640. Excessive. Excessive dieting to obtain an ideal image can be dangerous for teenagers. 641. Motivate. What motivated Napoleon to conquer much of Europe? 642. Rescue. Immediate first aid should be given to a person who has been rescued from drowning. 643. Significance. What is the significance of computer to humanity? 644. Scholar. He is not so much a scholar as a journalist. 645. Conservative. Conservative cultures are not innovative by nature. 646. Exclude. When you are 3 persons, then 2 of you should not whisper excluding the third person. 647. Emphasize. Policymakers should emphasize fuel efficiency improvement as a crucial strategy to control rising energy consumption. 648. Appetite. You are less likely to gain weight in summer than in winter because you tend to lose your appetite when it is hot. 649. Accommodation. Currently, foreign tourists are facing accommodation shortages in major destinations such as Tokyo and Osaka. 650. Certain. I am absolutely certain that I locked all the doors. 651. Complete. The objective of your science experiment is the reason for which you're completing the experiment. 652. Strengthen. Dance is not just an artistic expression but a way for groups to strengthen their shared identity. 653. Minority. Ethnic and racial minorities will comprise a majority of the population of the United States in a little more than a generation. 654. Remark. Her casual remarks made me feel very uncomfortable. 655. Sustainable. Many countries are being urged to implement concrete actions and measures to realize sustainable development. 656. Absorb. By absorbing carbon dioxide, trees help keep atmospheric temperatures in the proper range. 657. Offend. The paintings, designed to question the sexual morality of the times, offended the audience. 658. Nightmare. Nightmares during pregnancy can be very vivid, scary, and uncomfortable. 659. Advocate. Advocates of public transportation claim that investing in mass transit will ultimately reduce the total transportation cost for the public. 660. Adequate. We have been given adequate financial resources to launch a new business. 661. Conceal. If you destroy or conceal evidence, you could face criminal charges. 662. Irritate. When we are running short of calcium, we tend to get irritated easily. 663. Troop. President Truman did not seek congressional authorization before sending troops to Korea. 664. Faith. Many Japanese are intolerant of any strongly held religious faith. 665. Coastal. The climate along the coastal area of the island is tropical, but the mountain area can be quite cool. 666. Withdraw. For security purposes, most banks limit the amount you can withdraw from an ATM on a daily basis. 667. Contaminate. The soil around this river has been contaminated by a nearby factory. 668. Campaign. They have launched a signature campaign calling for an international treaty to ban nuclear weapons. 669. Affection. People who crave love often have this problem as a result of a childhood lack of affection. 670. Miserable. Losing your job is one of life's most miserable experiences. 671. Prosper. The online company prospered briefly before suddenly going into bankruptcy. 672. Undertake. The federal government offers a tax incentive to companies that undertake research and development activities. 673. Suspect. The suspect's fingerprints have been matched with those found at the scene of the crime. 674. Variation. Japanese has a significant amount of variation depending on the region. 675. Immense. Even though the building is not modern and attractive, the historic value is immense. 676. Pronounce. IT stands for Information Technology and is pronounced IT. 677. Focus. When it comes to hunting for a job, most people focus on what they should say to impress employers. 678. Revenue. Traditional universities are experiencing a loss of students and suffering a decline in revenues. 679. Statistics. Statistics reveal that Japan is one of the safest countries in terms of not only crime but also traffic accidents. 680. Inevitable. Does psychology explain that conflict and wars are inevitable? 681. Perceive. Technology has revolutionized the way humans perceive the real world. 682. Memorize. What is the most effective way to memorize the vocabulary of a foreign language? 683. Gene. Generations of parents' and grandparents' genes are passed along to your baby. 684. Ancestor. Around 1 million years ago our human ancestors had a brain size not very different from ours today. 685. Transparent. This beach is an excellent place for diving thanks to its shallow transparent waters. 686. Encounter. When you encounter unfamiliar things in a new environment, you may experience culture shock even in your own country. 687. Arrest. The man arrested for carrying illegal weapons was forced to get into the car by the police. 688. Consensus. It is our consensus that carbon dioxide is the main cause of global warming. 689. Diversity. Diversity can thrive only in the presence of tolerance. 690. Skeptical. 50 years ago, more people were skeptical about the solar power's potential. 691. Quote. Bill's comment about the government was quoted in today's newspaper story. 692. Justify. We can't justify wasting food when half the world is hungry. 693. Opponent. There is no greater danger than underestimating your opponent. 694. Sympathy. People sometimes feel sympathy for criminals and want them to get away with the crimes. 695. Urgent. Renewable energy is not an urgent matter in Australia, given the country's plentiful supplies of fossil fuels, particularly coal. 696. Detect. A variety of handheld and laboratory instruments are available for detecting and measuring radiation. 697. Tempt. Overuse of smartphones may tempt students to care excessively about how others think, feel, and behave. 698. Context. What I said has been taken out of context by the media. 699. Hygiene. The high cleanliness requirements and hygiene standards in the healthcare sector leave no room for compromise. 700. Elaborate. Elaborate wedding kimonos are sometimes handed down through the family. 701. Negotiate. Lawyers can charge their clients by the hour, or they can negotiate a set fee for the entire project. 702. Grasp. Children who don't grasp basic math concepts usually don't catch up, but early intervention helps. 703. Chore. When both parents are working, each can take turns with the daily household chores. 704. Consciousness. Fainting, the condition of a brief loss of consciousness, occurs from lack of oxygen in the brain. 705. Intense. While exercise is vital to health, intense overtraining can cause more harm than good. 706. Diagnose. Doctors often use multiple tests to diagnose breast cancer. 707. Deprive. Spending too much time surfing the internet can deprive many students of sleep. 708. Hospitality. As I mentioned in my previous lecture, hospitality is the essence of Japanese tea culture. 709. Coincidence. By coincidence, I was present on occasions when it was raining and so gained a rainy reputation. 710. Remote. The condition of education in remote and isolated area has been unfavorable. 711. Relieve. Regular exercise is one of the best and quickest ways to relieve tension and to increase your body's resistance to stress. 712. Tolerate. We hope that all businesses now understand that women will no longer tolerate sexual harassment. 713. Breakthrough. Researchers have made a breakthrough in the war on antibiotic-resistant superbugs. 714. Funeral. Funerals are an important tool for helping people cope with the grief of losing someone. 715. Pregnant. Generally, the best position to sleep when you're pregnant is on your side with your knees bent. 716. Prevail. I am confident that in the end freedom and democracy will prevail over terror and tyranny. 717. Transmit. It is economically good to transmit electrical power in a very high voltage. 718. Disorder. Many people suffer from sleeplessness as a result of physical, or more commonly, psychological disorder. 719. Solitude. Collaboration is key to creativity, but exceptional creativity often flourishes in solitude. 720. Compassionate. A compassionate attitude can greatly reduce the distress people feel in difficult situations. 721. Major. I am majoring in ecology at the university. 722. Inhabit. Currently, over 3.5 billion people inhabit urban areas. 723. Congestion. What is the best way to spend time while stuck in traffic congestion? 724. Emission. To address climate change, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 725. Mandatory. It is mandatory for factory workers to wear protective clothing when handling these chemicals. 726. Exaggerate. Does the media exaggerate cases of racial bias and discrimination? 727. Refrain. Unless people refrain from activities that pollute the environment, global warming could pose a threat to life on the Earth. 728. Harvest. Because of the poor harvest, wheat prices have gone up in the last 6 months. 729. Publicity. She received a lot of publicity after her performance in the film. 730. Sensible. It would have been more sensible to save money than to spend it all on clothes. 731. Explode. A bomb has exploded outside the Greek parliament in Athens. 732. Enhance. The need to ensure and enhance employee productivity is a reality no business can ignore. 733. Tribe. How does deforestation affect indigenous tribes in the Amazon rainforest? 734. Compensation. If the train you are traveling on is delayed, you are entitled to compensation. 735. Abundant. Japan used to be famous for its abundant supplies of clean, fresh water. 736. Anticipate. Anticipating the demand for the products and services that your business offers involves many factors. 737. Assert. Freud asserted that laughter releases tension and liberates mental frustration. 738. Opposition. Opposition to United States involvement in the Vietnam War began with demonstrations in 1964. 739. Hypothesis. Conducting an experiment without a hypothesis is like starting a road trip just for the sake of driving. 740. Competent. Candidates whose faces look competent enjoy an electoral advantage. 741. Amount. The travel agency said our trip expenses would probably amount to 80,000 yen. 742. Disturb. She was the last to board, carrying a huge stuffed animal that disturbed passengers on both sides of the aisle. 743. Poison. All drugs become poisons in large amounts, and many poisons are useful drugs in carefully controlled amounts. 744. Guideline. This brochure provides guidelines for consumers who want to cut the salt in their diets. 745. Considerate. It is so considerate of him to come and see his grandmother in the hospital every day. 746. Resist. By counting the white blood cells, we can estimate the degree to which the body can resist disease. 747. Envision. To stay motivated to save, envision yourself in 20 or 30 years. 748. Superstition. Black cats feature in the superstitions of many countries, but whether they mean good luck or bad varies. 749. Scenery. Using the beautiful scenery of our town in more creative ways would encourage people to come and live here. 750. Magnificent. The mountains of North Carolina boast magnificent views. 751. Summarize. Is summarizing books a copyright violation? 752. Dominate. Occupations in which women workers dominate tend to rank lower in terms of earnings. 753. Characteristic. It has long been thought that one of the characteristics which separate humans from other animals is the ability to reason. 754. Transition. The transition to an industrial society started in the 18th century, largely driven by advances in science and technology. 755. Ridiculous. He says he was taken by aliens, but no one believes such a ridiculous story. 756. Divorce. What separates the couples who choose to stay married from those who choose to divorce? 757. Excuse. Some have argued that lying can never be excused under any circumstances. 758. Hemisphere. People in mild climates in the northern hemisphere sometimes experience periods of very hot and humid weather. 759. Applause. It was such an excellent movie that the director received thunderous applause from the audience. 760. Stubborn. When your elderly parents need help but become stubborn, it can be a difficult situation. 761. Embarrass. I was embarrassed when my joke was taken as an insult. 762. Betray. The English writer said that if he had to betray either his country or a friend, he hoped he would betray the former. 763. Critic. The orchestra's awesome performance was received favorably by critics and audience alike. 764. Currency. The US dollar is the most widely used currency in the world, with many countries employing it as an accepted alternative to their own currency. 765. Rational. Even smart, educated, emotionally stable adults believe superstitions that they recognize are not rational. 766. Transfer. Why are employees transferred from one branch to another? 767. Settle. Arguments are common in all types of relationships, but sometimes they can be hard to settle. 768. Tragedy. The United Nations was set up after World War II to prevent future tragedies. 769. Inhabitant. Antarctica is the only continent on Earth without native human inhabitants. 770. Credible. Credible websites are the ones that are updated regularly and do not have any false information. 771. Eliminate. Emotional and physical hunger are both signals of emptiness which you try to eliminate with food. 772. Evaluate. It is necessary that teachers evaluate a student's ability from multiple aspects. 773. Priority. People with serious illness have other priorities besides simply prolonging their lives. 774. Virtue. God will certainly reward virtue and punish vice. 775. Imaginative. Our coach is imaginative and often comes up with new plans. 776. Modify. Genetically modified food or GM food is food produced from plants or animals whose DNA has been altered through genetic engineering. 777. Surrender. The robber finally surrendered and released his hostage. 778. Ritual. Shinto festivals generally combine solemn rituals with joyful celebration. 779. Prospect. No matter how security conscious you are, the prospect of thieves breaking into your home is always a worrying possibility. 780. Tolerable. The room is spacious and comfortable, though the air conditioning is a bit noisy but is tolerable. 781. Coordinate. Even a simple task like getting dressed requires coordinated muscle activity. 782. Inherit. I heard that Tom has inherited a fortune from his late uncle. 783. Theme. Having read several magazine articles on the theme, I was able to understand the presentation perfectly. 784. Landscape. New York City's skyscrapers have defined the urban landscape for decades. 785. Offensive. Without a dress code, students could wear clothing that is offensive, inappropriate, distracting, or threatening. 786. Abolish. Zoos are an unsuitable environment for wild animals and should, therefore, be abolished. 787. Convey. Books are one of the best systems that humans have ever developed for storing and conveying information. 788. Proficiency. Forming a reading habit in childhood is said to be associated with later reading proficiency. 789. Proportion. The proportion of Americans who do not tip in restaurants is estimated to be less than 2%. 790. Prominent. Two prominent sources of noise pollution are construction and transportation. 791. Discourage. Further increase in the price of gasoline would discourage him from driving his car. 792. Qualify. I am studying hard to qualify as a certified public accountant. 793. Quarrel. Reconciling after a quarrel is not always easy. 794. Fatigue. Muscle fatigue is a normal side effect of exercise. 795. Mature. I believe we're mature enough to use a computer appropriately. 796. Recall. I could not recall meeting him in person. 797. Facilitate. The role of the interpreter is to facilitate accurate communication between people who use different languages. 798. Angle. Whether it's a still shot or a movie, camera angles influence the look, feel and mood of that story. 799. Irony. The White House press secretary described the phenomenon of people buying guns after shooting attacks as a tragic irony. 800. Relevant. Students must be able to select relevant information from a lecture or text. 801. Wander. My favorite pastime is wandering in the woods. 802. Spot. I spotted a familiar face in the crowd at the concert. 803. Recruit. The company decided to recruit employees from diverse backgrounds. 804. Infer. The scientist inferred the results based on multiple experiments. 805. Clue. The clue of the mystery was buried beneath the old tree. 806. Perception. Our perception of time greatly changes as we age. 807. Commitment. Commitment to learning can open doors to new opportunities. 808. Trait. Ambition is a trait that drives many successful entrepreneurs. 809. Literacy. Illiteracy limits job opportunities, whereas literacy creates new possibilities. 810. Notion. The notion of zero is fundamental to mathematics and everyday life. 811. Property. Water molecules have many unique properties. 812. Oblige. All citizens are obliged to pay tax to the government. 813. Enclose. I have enclosed my resume for your reference. 814. Interfere. Interfering in someone's personal life can lead to problems. 815. Dissolve. You can dissolve the compound into the solution using heat. 816. Manufacture. Our company is ready to manufacture products on demand. 817. Valid. You need a valid passport to apply for a visa. 818. Unfounded. The complaints about the product were unfounded and misleading. 819. Passive. His passive attitude at meetings frustrated the entire team. 820. Spontaneous. Spontaneous applause erupted after the keynote speaker's inspiring speech.